I'm Brad Lincoln.
And I'm Gordon Schuck. We're the co-founders of Funkwerks in Fort Collins.
And you're watching the Beer Diaries.
Here we go.
Hey, I'm Greg from the Beer Diaries.
Hey, I'm Gordon Schuck, co-owner of Funkwerks.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for letting us be here. I mean, we took a little trip here. We were scouting, tried some of your beers. Super excited about being here.
Awesome. We're glad to have you here. Why don't you come inside and we'll show you around.
Yeah, maybe start in the tap room.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Let's go.
So this is our tap room. Have our year-round beers and then a lot of experimental stuff that we're kind of test marketing and see how they fly.
But on the taps themselves, I think you said they have two main regular beers.
Yep, Saison and Tropic King are year-round beers. We do seasonal in bottles, and then a lot of the experimental stuff that we're kind of testing out ends up going into the tap room.
So really, if you really want to try the amazing, unusual, and experimental stuff, you got to come here to try it fully.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Where next?
Next is a brewery. Why don't I show you that?
All right, check it out.
So this is where the brewing process starts, basically. We take our malt, mill in the night before we're going to brew, and get things ready. Everything is held in the grist hopper, and then the day of the brew, we'll transfer that over to the mash tun.
Saisons, any particular special ingredients? Is it a lot of wheat, isn't it? Is that correct?
We use quite a few different things. Raw wheat, regular wheat, sometimes oats, sometimes jasmine rice.
Right, yeah.
But, you know, it's a very yeast focused beer.
Cool. Let's move on to the brewing process.
Yeah, I'll show you the brew house. So this is our 15-barrel brew house. We're set up a little differently than most breweries. Specifically, we step mash. A lot of breweries do a single infusion mash. For Saisons, you really want to have high attenuation, so we go through probably 4 steps on our beers. So we're mashing in the kettle, go from about 90 degrees Fahrenheit to about 170 degrees. Transfer over to the lauter tun. From there, we run off the wort into the kettle and then boil in the kettle.
So yeah, the steps are, you hold it there and the magical processes happen, chemistry occurs, then you change it and new chemistry happens.
Exactly. One of the keys is a ferulic acid rest, and that's a low temperature rest. It helps bring out some of the spicier characters of the yeast.
Stuff you really obviously want to Saison.
Exactly what we want to do.
Cool. So what should we see next? We're getting near the end of the process. Like, we got fermenters here behind us. I mean,
after we finish brewing the beer, it'll go to a fermenter, spends about 2 weeks, gets another few days of dry hopping, and then goes off to the bright tanks for carbonation. I can show you that area. So these are our bright tanks. Right now we're transferring some Tropic King into our 30-barrel bright. From there it gets carbonated, and we carb pretty high. And traditionally Belgian beers are very high.
Yeah, quite effervescent as well.
Yeah, right? So we carb high. In fact, we've had these special pressure tested to higher pressure just to make sure we can hold it.
So what do you recommend for pouring? I mean, people often say, hey, pour right down the middle. And I mean, there's anything special you recommend?
I start slow. Once you get foam when you're pouring, it's game over. So start slow. If you want more, kind of lengthen out the distance. Get the head.
Awesome.
But yeah, definitely start slow.
So once you're done with the bright tanks, obviously you're putting into bottles, you're putting into kegs. There's also some barrels here.
Yep.
You guys are doing some barrel work now as well. So trying something you've been doing for a while, or is it pretty new?
You know, it's something we've been gradually building. For a while, we couldn't keep up with regular production, so we really couldn't start doing a barrel program. But in the last year, we started doing some sour beers, regular beers, kind of in bourbon barrels, or rum barrels.
Well, sour beers for you guys would be very exciting.
Yeah, we have an oat brewing going right now, and I think it's turning out pretty nice. So, actually, I could show you some of those barrels if you want.
Oh, I would love to see those barrels. Okay. I'll sort of touch them and feel the love through them. So cool. Let's do that.
Yeah, come on over. Here's our barrel. Gradually building up some more. Some we sourced ourselves, either bourbon, rum, cognac, some red wine barrels. Some we got from New Belgium. They've been a huge help. Lauren Salzar over at New Belgium has just been great to us. So we've gotten some Leopold Brothers that they have used for sour beer, and then kind of we're getting rid of We also have a couple rum barrels and whiskey barrels that they used. Right now we have an Oud Bruin going, and I noticed the ones that came from Belgium are definitely souring faster, so they have some
strong
inoculated
barrels.
barrels. So.
That's wonderful. Well, thanks. I mean, the tour's been great. I mean, this is wonderful to see. As I mentioned at the outset, it's really cool to come to Funkwerks and sort of see behind the scenes, because again, from an outside person's perspective, you imagine if this imagination what it could be, but just it's really really exciting to actually be here and learn from you what's in the brewery, and we'll have a deeper interview on some other topics very soon. So.
Yeah, I think Brad's around here somewhere.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. We'll chat shortly.
Okay.
So thanks. Appreciate
Sure,
it.
no problem.
Hey folks, I'm Greg from the Beer Diaries. I'm here at Funkwerks in Fort Collins, Colorado. I'm with the founders, Brad and Gordon. We are here to talk about Funkwerks, their amazing beer, and business in general. So, I mean, thanks so much for having us here. We really appreciate you guys having us on location. It's going to be really awesome.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I mean, as folks are probably aware, anyone who follows the beer business, you guys have made a pretty big hit, but you guys are pretty new. Can you talk about how things started, how you guys met, like a little bit about your backgrounds?
Well, we both kind of came from very different backgrounds. Gordon, you were up at Moots Bicycles, and I was an accountant up in, actually I was down in Arizona at that point. And both ended up in brewing school. I think we kind of had a similar, sold all of our stuff and went to brewing school.
I competed a lot as a home brewer. So gradually started competing at the national homebrew competition. Second year there, won a gold medal with the Saison, and it was at that point I started really thinking about.
You kind of had that belief. You're like, wait a
Well,
minute, I could do this.
You know, people that are winning medals at that level really, they've gone on to start breweries. So that kind of inspired me that maybe I could do it. So yeah, sell the house, sell the possessions, and hit the road. So.
And the road, I mean, the road was really interesting because I think it was the Siebel Institute.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's if folks are follow the beer business, one of the preeminent sort of technical and sort of artistic institutes in the world for beer.
Yeah, the first, when did we start? Like February of 2009? Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I think we spent a few months in Chicago in the winter. We probably could have timed that a little bit better because I remember being very, very cold and windy. And then we went over to Germany, Munich, for, I want to say, a month, somewhere
about
in that
5
neighborhood.
weeks.
Yeah.
And then we went around as part of the school, touring different manufacturing facilities of equipment, as well as different breweries. We kind of got a different taste there too.
Was there any particular place that blew you away? If each of you guys, was there a place that, wow, we went to here, it just opened my mind?
I think in general, being in Munich was a pretty incredible experience. It was such a beer-centered area.
But the culture.
The culture was all about beer. And then Cantillon was an interesting experience too.
Was that the one that I saw you smile when I?
Yeah. Well, my favorite was Orbal, Cantillon, and La Trappe. Our beer tour. They do a different one every year and hit a different area of Europe. And luckily, we got through Belgium, and so. I was just
some of the
psyched to see three Trappist. No, two Trappist and a Lambic brewer. So.
Well, and a very famous like sour and creative brewery for sure.
So that for me that was the highlight for sure.
And then you guys, when did you start the brewery? Like how did that? I mean, there was a Nano as well. I mean, you guys. Was it right after that you guys started? You met in school, it sounds like.
Met in school. I was down in Florida, in Key West, looking to see if I could start a brewery down there or get involved in something. Gordon called me up and said, "Hey, are you interested in doing a brewery on the Front Range of Colorado?" So flew out, cobbled together a business plan, came up with a name, and pretty much started going down the road about a month and a half after that. I moved out here to Fort Collins, and he moved down here from Steamboat.
I'm talking about like a leap of faith. You know what I mean? Like it's awesome. It's a really following your dream story, isn't it?
We knew we were both very dedicated to the industry, and we were going to be part of it somehow, and this just felt right.
Yeah, well, clearly the partnership's been pretty successful. The name obviously stands out. I'm curious where it came from.
The name we spent a long time on.
Naming is hard, actually.
It's very difficult. And we knew we didn't want any like animals involved in the name of the brewery.
Mountains, rivers.
Mountains and rivers were out.
Nature was not.
It was not going in. And then we didn't even want the word brewery in the name of the brewery. I don't know why, looking back, but we didn't. So we were like, well, what do we want? So we kind of settled on Works, and we just started putting a lot of different things in front of it. And a lot of stuff had been taken, Mash Works, Steam Works, Beer Works, a lot of those were taken. And Gordon suggested Funkwerks. And I think neither one of us were in love with the name at first. It was like, okay, well, I got to get on a
little
plane.
edgy, you know, I wasn't sure about it, but we talked probably a week later, and I'm like, well, you know, it's kind of growing on me.
And I'd started talking with people too, and it was a very polarizing name at first. We were like, either hated it or said, oh, that's a really cool, great name.
Well, it's memorable, which that's one of those, honestly, in an industry like beer in North America, where there's maybe nearing 3,000 breweries, if we include Canada, standing out is not a bad thing at all. And early on, I mean, you guys are really noteworthy for really trying to focusing on the Saison style of beer, which you know, a lot of breweries will maybe make one, but they certainly won't make two or three. It's very rare to have what you guys have done, which is a whole range. And what was it the familiarity and the sort of skill built up there, or what was the thinking on focusing on Saison?
I think there's a couple different things. First of all, Gordon did have the skills in that area.
It's pretty evident, yes.
So that was a good plus. And then he really introduced me to the style. I don't remember having it that much in brewing school, and I was really more of an American Pale Ale, IPA kind of drinker before going to brewing school. I didn't even really like lager that much, and I came out of brewing school having an incredible appreciation for Belgian and lager, and that's mostly what I drink these days. And so he introduced me to Saison, and I believe the first one we had was Saison Brett by Boulevard, right? So I'm gonna think
that's a great Saison.
And so we had that, and I was blown away by it,
Yeah.
and thought, well, this seems like a good idea. And I knew Gordon, and he had said General Brewery, but I knew he wanted a Saison-focused brewery,
Right.
and so I was like, okay, well, we haven't reached that yet. But then I had that and thought, well, this would be a good direction to go in, and there wasn't a lot of people doing Saisons at that point in time.
And also, I mean, when you think of it from a beer style, probably very year-round. I mean, it's got a bit of warming, but it's also got that lighter, sort of very attenuated, dry finish. It's great in summer. Like and good with food as well. Like it's one of those styles that once people actually learn it and appreciate it, it is one of my personal favorite styles. So in terms of the brewery itself, I mean, you guys have kind of grown leaps and bounds-ish. I mean, I think because you started really small, like a nano. Like, I mean, what's the barrel counts been the last few years for you guys, approximately? Or
I think the first year we started was, I want to say, like 60.
We did the one barrel system probably for about 3 or 4 months. Our first festival we went to was Great American Beer Festival. You know, just jumped right into the deep end of the pool. And then by the end of that year, we had moved into this spot, bought the 15 barrel system.
And so you're over, I think you're still under between 1,000, 2,000 sort of barrels.
Yeah, we were then the next year, I think we did 600 as a brewery, and then we did just under 1,000.
Okay. As far as availability as well, I mean, with those kind of volumes, you're probably, I mean, still well within primarily Colorado, I'd imagine.
We just went out to Nebraska in February.
Okay, so
before that, we were just in Colorado, and we weren't even distributed past the Front Range.
Right. Oh wow. So in terms of you know, the recipes and the range, I mean, you guys do offer a pretty big range. I mean, I think for not a lot of volume, but I mean, you have how many beers? You have the main beers, the Saison and the Tropical King, and then you have seasonals and then Taproom specials. Maybe if you want to talk a little bit about kind of how many beers a year, unique beers you guys do.
This year, we're focusing on 4 seasonals, and then we do experimentals. So that will be stuff just for Fort Collins or just the Taproom.
Right.
And that's just one-off things that we can have a lot of fun with. And you can see that's Leuven right there.
Right.
Will eventually become a seasonal. That'll be our summer seasonal. But it starts off as an experimental. And we'll try it many different ways to make sure that we get the recipe down.
So the Taproom itself, does that provide, I mean, sort of a great opportunity? I mean, first of all, it's a good business sense to have a good tap room to selling beer. Second, is it an experimental place? Is that where folks are kind of seeing the stuff and they giving you feedback on what they try?
Yeah, definitely. People come in and will give us feedback, and it's good for us to, when we go in there and kind of taste it on a more regular basis instead of just tasting it in a brewery setting.
So one question I had, let's talk a little bit about the GABF experience, and you know, explain to viewers the Great American Beer Festival, gigantic contest. I mean, it's folks go there. Thousands of beers, hundreds of breweries, and in every category you're seldom without 50 or 80 or 100 competitors. And you guys have had an incredible run. I mean, it's interesting starting with your Saison win in the homebrew, but then maybe talk a bit of what's happened over the couple of years for you guys at GABF. Like, and the pressure's on, obviously. I'm just curious. Like, maybe talk a bit about that. I'll drill into a little bit of that.
Getting the silver the first year was pretty incredible. I mean, it made us legitimate.
Which beer was that for?
Saison. So.
Yes.
We only entered into, I want to say, 2 categories that time.
Right.
Around Saison, and I think we
had
entered
4 beers.
4 beers total.
Oh, maybe, okay.
But I think it was only 2 categories.
You get
That's
multiple
my
Saisons.
memory.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Categories wise, yeah.
And I remember one of them was the white beer, which we knew was not going to win anything. So we were really just counting on one category.
What category was that one? Is it,
That was in
it
white.
like a wit? Like
Yeah.
was a wit?
But we used our Saison yeast, so it was very dry. It was higher alcohol than typical in the guidelines.
Yeah,
so
they like being
it's
guidelines.
just, yeah.
But then you get the silver for the Saison, and it's just like, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was incredible.
And that was the first beer that was a beer we wanted for our flagship. So it was great to win for that one.
And then the next year, 2012 was even, in a sense, even bigger.
Yeah, I remember that wasn't that long ago now, and I remember sitting there, and we were both hoping that we'd medal in Saison again, so we would look legitimate. Because one year could just be a freak accident.
Well, it's interesting too, because folks don't seem to serially medal in categories very often. Like it seems like, if you're watching, it's often new people come in. There's quite a bit of change. So, and you guys did, obviously.
Yeah. So we medaled, and we were again as the gold, and so they called out the bronze and the silver.
So you started sweating.
Yeah, we were getting. I was getting pretty frightened. I don't know if you were at that point. And then they call out, they say Saison, and then they say Funkwerks right afterward. And I was like, okay. And so we got up there, and I was texting friends and family, and then I think we got called up for Deceit again.
What style is Deceit? Deceit is a
Belgian Golden Strong.
Golden Strong, got it.
And I wasn't expecting to, place in anything else at all. I was already kind of like checked out.
Type beer, so I didn't think it would do well because usually that's pretty much
right. Yeah, it's like that effervescence.
Yeah,
traditional.
so
again, we're up on stage again at that point in time. It was pretty incredible.
And you had to go on the stage again.
Yeah.
This time for the Small Brewery of the Year.
Well, they called our name. I stood up. You sat there texting.
That's right.
And I'm like, look at the screen. We got to go on stage.
That's right. At that point, I think I was shaking. Like I was so over the top for us.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I mean, and so obviously that has a huge impact on your business.
Demand certainly went up, especially for Deceit immediately after that, and the Saison as well. Saison and King have always kind of sold equally, but Saison, from winning more medals, is starting to sell a little bit more than King is. Certainly on the distribution side, we had contracts going with several distributors at that point in time, and I think it helped us, knowing who we were, and we just became credible. And then suppliers as well. Getting MicroStar, we were a small brewery to get MicroStar, but they're the ones who presented us the award, so
that's awesome.
They were happy to pick us up at that point.
Very, very cool. So one question I have about the Saison is how much has it changed from your original recipe? Sort of.
When we started the brewery, we started with a blank slate, so it wasn't anything like the homebrew version that I won the national homebrew competition with. We wanted something that was pretty much a classic example. We didn't want to spice it. We wanted to keep the recipe pure and simple, and really let the yeast kind of shine in that. So we did probably 9 pilot batches. Chose batch number 6 as our prototype.
So you kind of tweak things the whole time.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think we talked about earlier, I mean, you were doing multiple temperature rests, so for the viewers, that's like when you're brewing, you stop at certain points and let chemical magic or biochemical magic happen. And I mean, so in other words, you're not doing it the easy way.
There's definitely faster ways of making beer, and we tend to make it very slow. But we don't filter, we don't do fining, which drops yeast out and lets you kind of move beer faster. We're very natural about the way we do it.
We turn tanks when they're ready, not rushing them or anything like that.
Right. So one thing we do on the Beer Diaries is we actually take questions from our fans and from folks on the internet. I know I'm going to hide the logo. This is from my former life. You can maybe guess it's video game related, but I won't say anything. I'm going to check out the questions I had. So I know John Rubio of the Beerists had a question. Any thoughts about cool ship brewing? Any sort of wild yeast harvesting from the environment? Is that something that has tickled your fancy yet?
Yes and no. I mean, cool ships are cool, but I don't know. It's kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah, it's rolling the dice, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll explain to folks on what it is. A cool ship is like literally you kind of put like a small amount of beer in sort of tub, and
in order to cool the beer, they used to pump the beer to an attic, open up all the rafters, and then the beer was maybe 6 to 8 inches deep in a 30 by 50 tub. That surface area just would cool the beer, but all the microorganisms in the air would just fall right in.
Right, and stuff would happen.
So in some places where you have really good souring organisms, like West Belgium or Brussels, where it just works perfectly. That's great, but it's kind of a crapshoot. What you can get.
So it's not something you're going to run out and do. Anything
No, I think you have much better control if you kind of pick your organisms.
Yeah, makes sense.
I could get you like a kiddie pool if you wanted to do something like that, but that would be about the extent of it.
Cool. So speaking of beer, why don't we try a couple? What would we start with? Obviously, I was drinking the Saison. We have. Was that what you would think would start, or what would you guys recommend as a first?
Typically what we start with, but
What's
the
Leuven must be a different type of Saison. Or?
I was at Craft Brewers Conference and saw a presentation on Berliner Weiss, and kind of got the wheels kind of rolling. And
interesting.
I was thinking, okay, what would a historic Saison be, 100 years ago when it was a mixed fermentation and that kind of thing.
Is it a sour mash at all in that, or is it?
We sour the wort, actually. So we use some of the techniques for modern Berliner Weiss, where we sour the wort, then do a boil, and then ferment traditionally.
Right, because I think now, because there's such a variety of the way Saison was done, just like literally all these different farmhouses have this vat of beer going.
Yeah.
You got all kinds of crazy
And
results.
traditionally they were lower alcohol. I think that one is 3 or 4%.
It says 5.7.
It's a little strong.
Well, it was funny.
The label's wrong.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It was funny coming into the tap room. So, like a little bit of beer with lunch. I go, oh, what's the lightest beer you got? Oh, we got a 5.8 blonde. I go, I guess I'll have that, which was delicious beer.
So I think this is from our very first batch, and you'll notice it still has the experimental label. When it comes out, it won't be named Leuven.
And so you're going to do that as a summer seasonal?
Yeah, that'll be our summer seasonal this year.
Oh yeah, no, it's got lovely sour nose on it. No, it's super. It just goes poof in your mouth. It's got that
Very dry,
that Belgian finish that you like. I've heard other brewers talk about that amazing kind of. It quenches your thirst and then it's gone. There's a little bit of tight sourness to it. So when you put Brett in a beer, like how do you decide? Do you dose a certain amount?
They say Saccharomyces is like dogs and Brett is like cats. You can't train a cat, so it kind of does its own thing sometimes. In order to kind of tone it down, sometimes I'll add it to the secondary or partially into the fermentation.
Right. And Brett chews up more of the sugars than Saccharomyces does.
Yeah.
So
it gives it that kind of dry, effervescent kind of finish.
Yeah, it's almost got a little bit of apple in it. Like this is such it's a really, I can see like this would be a killer patio beer. The Saison really such a wonderful example. So dry, nice and spicy. Like that yeasty spiciness is such a big part of it. It's interesting to try the Leuven prior to this because again the Leuven is even drier. Like it even hits that palate and just kind of goes poof even more, and maybe it's I got a little more apple.
I actually noticed that when we were switching this time too. There's almost more residual sweetness in Saison than I'm used to.
But there's so little.
I know.
I know. That's the thing,
and with our yeast, we get above 90% attenuation, which for typical brewing is unheard of. Usually you're talking 75 to 80%.
Yeah. What should we have next? What's next?
I'd probably go to King. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, go to King.
Okay, we'll do King next.
And the idea for this King was this beer was to bump up kind of everything in our Saison a little bit more. It's 8% alcohol.
This is an imperial. It's described as an imperial Saison, which not many of those around.
Yeah, we kind of made up an imperial Saison, I think.
Made up the stuff. You guys probably have right to do so.
So the hops in this are New Zealand Reikau. They're very kind of mango tangerine kind of hop flavor and aroma. And then this one, originally I wanted it to be an extremely pale beer, but someone added more Munich malt.
When I laid out the malt, I laid it out wrong when we first started off, and I ended up screwing it up. And I tried to reassure Gordon. I was like, trust me, nobody's had this beer before. They're not going to know what it's supposed to taste like, what you intended. And he just looked at me and shook his head. But it ended up becoming a favorite.
Well, it's a nice
I think a Munich really backs up those hops really nicely. So.
And then, as we move to the next beers, it's interesting because originally Saisons, and now we're getting the rest are actually Belgian style ales. So Deceit obviously next, I think, is that?
So Deceit was the Golden Strong that won
gold last
year at GABF. That beer was actually designed to go into a cognac barrel. I wanted a strong golden ale to kind of go into there. I wanted to have a little more body in it. What didn't go into the barrel went into the tap room, and next thing you know, people were like, I love this. So,
oh, really? So in other words, it
was one of those things where it turned out to be a great beer on its own.
Kind of rich. What's your nose on it?
I get a little caramel.
Wow. That's not what you expect from a golden ale. Like
It seems like it's evolved over the last 6 or 8 months too.
And we've done the cognac barrel, which is called Scepter. And then I think we've got a rum barrel version of this coming out soon as well. That'll probably just be very local, but it's a great barrel beer.
Well, no, I can imagine this being paired with rum because you have a bit of the richness and a bit of that caramel. I can just go, man, if you put rum with this, like it would be even smoother, even.
I'm very excited.
Like going to detail in your backgrounds. I mean, so you were a CPA. Like, did you ever imagine you'd be doing this? Like, you said you were doing a little work with the beer industry.
Yeah, I did a little work. I was up in Portland, Oregon, so it's kind of a very craft-focused town. And I've worked for a maltster up there in Vancouver, Washington, and then also a distributor. I was outside accountant, but that was a little bit of a taste of it. But I always kind of wanted to do something entrepreneurial. Starting a company, I knew I would do that. That's kind of why I got into accounting to begin with. We
were talking earlier with some entrepreneurs. We would just start things and go, hey, let's figure it out. And then when we really want to have, some kind of backing in some of the things.
There was a lot of us just figuring it out too.
Well, no, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I think Gordon, I mean, you were an engineer. I think it was electrical.
Yeah, electrical engineering. Did that for, I don't know, a few years. I kind of took up bike frame building as a hobby. And ended up in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, building titanium bikes. Did that for 11 years. Somewhere along the line, I mentioned that I always wanted to homebrew.
Had you been homebrewing the whole time, or you started kind of a little later?
A little later. At some point I mentioned at work, and my friend Brad said, well, I got some equipment that I bought years ago I never used. You can have it. So did a couple extract batches. Immediately went to all grain, and it's like
extract batch is kind of. I mean, I don't mean to denigrate it. It was almost like making soup, right? You dump
this in, you dump that on, which
you miss the tactile elements. And
and it's like cooking. Do you have cake mix or you do make it from scratch?
I did a lot of extract batches when I was homebrewer.
Well, no, it's not. Like I said, it's not a bad thing because I think it's one of those things. What it really is great about it. It's a very achievable and great entry point. Like you can just do it. Like you don't need anything real fancy. You just need something to boil, something to ferment, and then you're going, right? And then I think you always, when you start getting amazed at what you've created, that's where it's.
That's the thing. It's like those batches turned out really good, and I, as an engineer, I just wanted to learn more. I wanted to know exactly how, to do everything. How it all works. So.
Cool. So I'm gonna make other glasses magically appear. Let's see. Ooh, ghost glasses. Do we have one?
We have one more.
All right. That was a tremendous beer. Like I gotta say.
That's your favorite?
I'm such a Saison fan. I was like, there's no competition. It's the straight up Saison. But that one, I'm gonna try the Dark Prophecy because I know this one's a Prophet. Sorry, it's a very remarkable beer. I mean, it must have been interesting because the judges must have had it and went like, I mean, you must have stood out. You know what I mean? Like it stood out so much from the other entries because it's just a very different golden ale.
So this one, this is the second year we did this one.
Is it dark strong? Is that?
Not entirely. Last year we did it. It was a dark saison, so we used purely our house yeast. The problem with our house yeast is so attenuative; it doesn't leave much body. So I think this one is actually a blend of that. Some of this goes into bourbon barrels, freshly emptied bourbon barrels. And we then kind of blend with unbarrel aged to kind of tone it down.
You get a little bit of richness off the nose, can't you? Like a little bit of the.
I want to get
dark fruit,
kind of that caramel, vanilla from the wood, but I don't want it to be just overwhelmingly bourbon.
Yeah, no, it's there, but wow.
We try to go for a lot of balance with everything we do.
Yeah,
we want things to be drinkable, not over the top.
I was gonna say also, I mean, the body on this is really it's got a richness to it, but not a heaviness. I think my favorite is the Deceit. I wasn't expecting that because I mean, you guys are so well known for Saison. I've had your Saison a couple times and always been blown away by it. But man, the Deceit is really tasty. Like it's just a very surprising beer. The key thing for us is all the sort of messages are really similar on the show, which is one, drink local. Number two, come to the tap rooms of the brewery. So coming here to the Funkwerks tap room, you will try beers that will probably blow your mind, because some of the experimental ones are very unique, and even just the availability of your beers for folks that are out of state, like, you know, it'll get there. I mean, but you guys, again, don't rush. Take your time. Do it carefully and keep that magic alive. And the beers are just tremendous.
Thank you.
Once again, I want to really thank you for being here. It's an incredible chance to see Funkwerks, meet you guys, learn a bit what's gone into creating this incredible brewery, and drinking some unbelievable beers that make me question beer in a good way, I think. So really appreciate it. Thanks for the hospitality. It was wonderful talking to you guys. Cheers. Great.
Cheers. Thank you.
Na zdrowie, slancha, Proust, all those, na zdrowie, there's a whole bunch of them. So thank you guys.